Now on to our first topic, Britain's role in jihad in northern Iraq. This week we saw shocking video coverage of an apparently British man out to behead an American journalist. It was shocking, but for those who've been following it, not surprising. In his cover story this week, Douglas Murray says how this should be seen as a logical extension of what's been going on for a long time in Britain, the steady radicalisation and our ability to export jihad better than anybody else in the West. Shiraz Maher is a King's College academic and one of Britain's leading authorities in radicalisation. Douglas, you say in your piece that this isn't even the first time that a Brit with a London accent's been behind a beheading. This sort of thing has happened before.
Yes, it's not, amazingly enough, it's not even the first time that a London-born Brit or London-based Brit has been involved in the murder of an American journalist. In 2002, as I mentioned in my piece, the London-born and London School of Economics graduate Omar Sheikh was behind the kidnap and beheading of the Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl. There are many other cases in the interim of Brits going abroad, fighting in a range of conflict zones, sometimes bringing that back here. But it's part of a pattern. That's why I say it is, on the one hand, obviously incredibly shocking, and yet anyone who's paid any attention over the last decade should realise it isn't surprising.
Well, Shiraz, you've been following all this right from the very start. What do you see happening here? Has Britain had a massive supply of jihadis who've just migrated, or is this war having a radicalising effect on people who are halfway there already?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, really. There are a number of people for whom this is the fight they've wanted to have. They've had a long-standing history of radical activism in this country. They're the people we see burning poppies outside the American embassy and doing all that kind of activity traditionally. This is the fight they've wanted to have, and it's provided them with that opportunity. But on the other side, there's a whole bunch of other people who have gone into this from a standing position. They were not radicals before, but through what they've seen over the last few years, they've decided that this is something they want to be part of. They want to go out there and to build this Islamic State. They regard it as a utopia, and frankly, they think they're winning right now. And that momentum is propelling them to go out there.
Right. And the Brits that we're seeing involved in this there's a striking number of them. The figures range anything from 500 to up to 1,500. But are they actually getting to senior positions within ISIS? Or are they just being used to go in front of the YouTube video camera because that's the way ISIS likes to do social media, to use Western voices to talk to Westerners?
Well, the point is, the British fighters out there are not in the senior leadership positions. The ones in the senior leadership are overwhelmingly Iraqi. And then the others who occupy more military tactical roles are those who are coming from countries where they've had direct combat experience. So a lot of the Chechens and fighters on the Balkans, who of course have had their own experience fighting out there. But we've been down to the border areas of Syria and Turkey, talking to fighters, met some foreign fighters as well, but spoken to a lot of people out there who are Syrian themselves, who've experienced this war. And a lot of them told us during our fieldwork that they regard the British fighters out there to be among some of the most extreme and vicious fighters who have come into this conflict.
The most extreme and vicious fighters. And Douglas, isn't it? I mean, it's not as if Britain is Chechnya. You've got people who've been living in complete peace and security. Why should it be that they go into a theatre of war and then rank amongst the most vicious fighters?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, the work that Shiraz and his colleagues have done in bringing a lot of this to light has been invaluable, because we do now know more now about the mindsets of these people than I think at any point before. It is a whole range of things, I mean, as Shiraz just mentioned. Among other things, the opportunity to kind of have a cause, the opportunity to be involved in something they think as being a potentially winning cause.
Well, to give your life meaning or something.
It's partly that. It's very striking as well, the video of those who were recruited from Cardiff. The video that came out, when was it, last month, of the Cardiff fighters who've gone over to Syria. It's all that rhetoric of, think about your life. Is it a meaningful existence? Is it an important existence? And these people, in a way, I mean, I suppose one has to separate out. On the one hand, of course, there is a very clear religious ideology that they believe they are propelled by, but there is also the, as it were, sort of angst of wanting a cause and wanting to find meaning and so on, which they have in common with a lot of young people, and of course in particular always a lot of other young men.
Now, Shiraz, this is one of the very few wars we're actually able to follow on social media because the combatants are tweeting. I imagine, of course, these are self-selecting guys. It doesn't give us a genuine cross-section of it. But can you say more about just why this has become such an important tool for ISIS? They're rather professional. They're using or working with organisations like Vice News, for example, who produced a stunning hour-long documentary which must have been done with the, obviously not just with their cooperation, I dare say it was done after some censorship from ISIS too. But is this part of their strategy to actually try to shock and awe the whole world with these videos?
I think when we consider what ISIS or the Islamic State is doing right now, it's important to see where they've come from. Al-Qaeda had traditionally mastered propaganda and understood how to get its message out there. The Islamic State is really an ultra form of this. It has understood how to capitalize and utilize social media, allowing its fighters to tweet, to spread messages. It has force multipliers all around the world. There's this huge community of people who sit in the West or in other parts of the world who are cheering on and supporting everything this group does. And so the level of support that ISIS is able to generate for its activity is phenomenal, really.
And you follow the support as well, do you?
We follow the supporters, but we follow the fighters very, very closely. And we're now following over 500 accounts. And a lot of social science data shows that actually to follow one individual account doesn't give you much information. But when you begin to bring together a group of people, self-selecting though they are, you can begin to make some very accurate conclusions about their religious beliefs, about their political affiliations, what they're aspiring to. And unfortunately, what we've seen now in Syria, particularly over the last 2 to 3 months since the announcement of the sort of declaration of the caliphate, is a real hardening of attitude, a real sense of callousness and brutality that they were trying to cover up before. They're bringing a lot of that out into the open now.
Right. And Douglas, why Britain? I mean, there are Muslims all over Europe. There's not much sign, or perhaps, Shiraz, you can tell us that there is, of sort of French jihadis or Italian jihadis. What is it about British jihadis that seems so distinctive?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that Shiraz would agree that in a way it's not absolutely distinctive to Britain. Most Western countries have a version of this at the moment. There's been significant soul searching and hand-wringing in Australia in recent months over Australians who've gone out to fight. We've seen the same from Canada, from the US, from Denmark, from Scandinavia, and from France and Italy and so on. So it is a problem that a lot of countries have got at the moment. I think one of the important things, though, if I can just say about this, and something I try to bring out in the piece, is that there is a terrible tendency in Britain at the moment, has been going on for a long time, to regard everything in this part of the world as being something to do with 2003, something to do with Tony Blair, something to do with George Bush. That basically Britain's desire to keep on returning and picking up the scab of the debate over Iraq in a way is clouding our ability to see what is actually happening there at the moment. Is this because of an intervention or not? And one of the things I say in the piece, which I just really stress and think is an important thing to bring out, is to an extent this is really not about us. It's not about Britain. Of course there are parts of it that are, but to a great extent it isn't. And let me put it this way. In the 1990s, this country did not intervene in the Balkans, and a generation of British people and others went out to join the jihad in the Balkans. In the 2000s, we did intervene in Afghanistan, we did intervene in Iraq, and to an extent, we created another part of a generation of jihad. We haven't intervened in Syria, and by not intervening, again, there is an element of people going out and another jihad. So one of the things I really think that people in Britain should think about in this is this actually because of us intervening or not intervening, or is it possible, and I would submit it is, that there is a hatred and a momentum and an ideology in the world at the moment that is very powerful to some people and which would exist whether we existed or not, whether Labour was in power, a coalition government of Conservative and Lib Dems, whoever is in power. This is actually about more than us.
I think actually just to build on that point, the ideology that a group like the Islamic State is offering is incredibly seductive to young men who are poorly integrated, as Douglas was saying before. They're searching for identity, searching for a cause, and they're coming along and saying, look, we have a panacea to the problems of the Muslim world, and there are many problems, but we can uproot all of this by creating this Islamic State. And guess what? We've done it. And we're holding territory, large amounts of territory in Syria and Iraq, and we're being allowed to do it effectively. And so these guys find that idea Very, very powerful. And I think it also goes back to something which Douglas talks about in his piece, which is that there is a long history, a long tradition of very radical Islam in parts of British Muslim life in this country. And so even though a lot of the sort of caricature headline sort of preachers may not be here anymore, Omar Bakri Muhammad's gone, Abu Hamza has gone, and various other clerics are no longer here, that doesn't matter. A certain idea has been established. So there is a generation of Muslims, a minority, but nonetheless a generation who do believe that a very austere, very narrow, dogmatic caliphate is exactly what the Muslim world needs. And so when they see this taking place now, they're saying, well, this is what we've been told about, this is what we've been waiting for, and off they go.
And have you noticed Brits being more disproportionately present in Iraq than other European countries?
So we've collated figures from around Europe, North America and Australia about who's been going. The numbers from Britain are high, but they're certainly not the highest from Europe. We estimate about 2,000 in total, roughly, just over 2,000 have gone from Europe as a whole. When you weight the numbers by the size of the Muslim community in those countries, Belgium actually is the highest, it's the first. Scandinavian countries also rank very highly. Britain is certainly top 5, and France, of course, is also very highly represented. And the point to make is a lot of these guys, earlier on, if they went in the end of 2012, at the start of 2013, they were joining some of the other groups as well. So they were going to groups like Ahrar Sham or lesser known organizations. Now people are by and large more or less exclusively going to join the Islamic State.
Right. And Douglas, the Prime Minister, has come back from Cornwall to look at all this, but what exactly can he do? Can we link this to any sort of, Home Office border security issue? Yvette Cooper today is from the Labour Party is talking about softening control orders being connected to it. Is there anything which David Cameron has done in the last few years or could do now that can make any difference to this?
Well, there are things that could be done. There are things that could be done, I think, on the ground in Syria and in Iraq, and I certainly think that a less laissez-faire attitude towards the situation could be employed. However, I think that the political point scoring of Yvette Cooper on this is rather unpleasant to see, really.
And Shiraz, finally, you've been following 500 accounts. Are they growing? Do you get the sense that momentum is building quickly here? Or?
We saw a lot of momentum towards the end of last year. Then it's actually slowed down at the start of this year because of the infighting. It's certainly picking up again, and not least because of the declaration of the caliphate by the Islamic State, and that's given people a sense of momentum now who want to go and be part of that.
And what effect would this video have on the sort of people you're looking at now but who are still in Britain? Would this be the sort of thing that would actually inspire them to go out there, do you think? But surely they would be shocked at the beheading of a blameless American.
It is very difficult to explain to ordinary members of society that people who are sitting in the West, in this country, who are supporting the Islamic State, when they saw what happened to James Foley, are cheering that and are embracing that. We have a lot of software that monitors sort of sentiment analysis and all these kinds of things on social media. There is, without a doubt, a huge community of people, many of them resident in the West and in this country too, who were cheering and celebrating what happened last night to James Foley. And so in that sense, actually, it doesn't put them off at all. They will celebrate anything they regard as humiliating the West or being a challenge to the West, and of course that's precisely the terms in which that video was framed.